Well, we're back again. It's been one of those eventful weeks, and well, a lot more eventful than it should have been. Yeah, as we speak, we're on the tail end of a storm which has come through, and about 50 million alerts from the Weather Bureau as to what was and wasn't going to happen. But we've had a really difficult week with our domain names. They have managed to get lost. It's a long, complicated story as to what actually happened. There was a takeover, and somewhere in all of that mess, all the things that we're normally expecting to go right just didn't go right. Well, we've got one of the domain names back, and we think we're in the process of getting the second one back. But that put us down a route that is leading to the topic for today, and that's backups. Because while we didn't have our darbeth.com.au domain working, we ended up getting a darbeth.net.au and using that as a backup for when people couldn't get through to us on the .com address. And while .com was not functioning, we couldn't send emails, we couldn't receive emails, and there was a whole drama associated with all of that. But the .net at least got us functioning, and we're able to do a few things. And that has led me to think about the importance of backups, because we had an alternate path to keep us going and to keep us live. So that's the topic for discussion for this week, is backups. Now, we're not going to be talking just about data backups. In our context, normally we think of a backup is copying something off one disk onto another disk, or a CD or a tape or something like that. But in business, it's also useful to have your processes backed up so that you have something in play should you have problems in other areas. This is basically risk management, if you want to look at it from that point of view. But you need to have a backup to lots of things so that you can keep functioning when the unexpected does happen. Now, the first one that I'm just going to run through and give you some food for thought, and in reality we're just going to give you some ideas to think about. This can't be an exhaustive list because we don't know your particular business, but these are things for you to think about. What would you do with your business if the internet went down? Now, some businesses, it wouldn't make too much of an impact. For our business, it makes a huge impact because live streaming is our business. And what happens if it goes down? You need an alternative, and that's what the backup is about. So it's not just about these data backups we mentioned. What other ways would you have of getting onto the internet if you needed to? If you couldn't get onto the internet, what other processes can you put in play so that you can keep functioning? Do you need to have some sort of a paper backup? These are the sorts of things that you need to consider. We're not going to go into detail, but just thoughts for you to consider about what you need to have backed up. Similarly to the internet, what happens if your website is hacked or broken or ransomware or something like that? How would you go about your business? Or you got to think about what's the impact on my business if my website is not working. Moving on from the website, what about your social media? Now, we had a meltdown with Facebook not too long back, and there were a lot of people who were really severely caught out because they depended on Facebook. But you need alternatives to that. Your own website is a fundamental on that, so that can take over, because you have control over your own website much, much more than you have over Facebook, don't you? Next, we have banks going down. Now, I've been in shops when the power's gone off or they've lost the connection to the banks, and the cashiers are really totally lost. They don't believe they could do anything at all when the banks are down. So again, how does that impact your business? What do you need to have in place to get around those sorts of issues? Not only if the banks are down, but what happens if there's some sort of severe weather like we've just been through where we currently are. Storms are wreaking havoc, you can't get in, or floods are stopping things from going on, or maybe heat is causing severe problems. I know many years ago we used to be teachers, and one of the rules that was drummed into us before we started was if there were floods and you couldn't get to your school, you went to the nearest school. and that was the backup plan that they had in place in that environment. So again, what do you need to do? Next, no electricity. Well, let's kind of relate it to that, because often when you have severe weather, the electricity goes out, but that can happen for other reasons as well. Does that impact your business? If so, what do you need to do to make sure that you can still function on there? Next, key equipment. It does have a habit of breaking down, and usually the more key the piece of equipment is, the more it breaks down at the time that you need it. So it's time for you to think, how do we work around that, and how do we handle these unexpected events when they do turn up? Moving on from the equipment, similarly, if key staff are not available, which can happen at any time, we don't wish ill on anybody, but there are occasions when people are just no longer available, accidents or sickness or difficult situations in the family. They're key staff. What are your backup plans? How do you work around them? Time to think about it. What about supply chain shortages? Now, we've seen a lot of that over this pandemic period, and my gut feeling is that we've only seen the tip of the iceberg because it's been a slow moving issue. It's just gradually making its way through it. It can take a long time to clear out. So even if COVID disappeared tomorrow, it would take months, if not years, for the supply chain to get back to normal. What's your backup? What other alternatives do we have in place to handle not getting the equipment, the stock, the materials, the services that we need to get the job done? And lastly, which is related very definitely to our pandemic period that we are in, what if there's another lockdown or there are other restrictions which are placed on you? This is much, much more difficult to predict because it's really unknown what they are going to do. But if there is a lockdown, such as we've known, how would you manage business? A lot of people have obviously moved online. Is that going to work continually? Are there other things that you can do to work your way around that? So this is what we're about today. Just a reminder about backups. What is it that you need to do to make sure that your business will keep functioning through things that could happen, but you will never know when they're going to happen and if they are going to happen. So that's it for this week. If you have any other tech issues or communications issues such as we talk about, feel free to give us a call or email us. We're there to talk with you and help you through that. And until next week, have a good day.